So first of all, I would like to thank you all for inviting me to have this lecture today. I know I'm speaking about a topic that is not commonly referred to in the archaeology in our region, though it is much more common in the areas of Great Britain and the United States. First of all, this is a presentation that comes from my master thesis and from two presentations I had in the EEA conference in Bern last year, as well as a presentation I had at the conference of Istrian archaeologists last year. So why did I choose this topic? I was always fascinated by both archaeology and its focus on material culture, as well as modern society. So very soon I tried to connect the two, and I came across a principle that it is possible to use archaeological concepts to research modern societies. If we see ourselves as science, we should be able to use concepts such as typology, topography, and the idea that material culture is inadvertently connected to human society, both in antiquity and in modern society. So first of all, I would like to show you this picture, which is a picture of two typologies of containers. One is, everybody knows this, vessel's typology of amphorae, and the second is a typology of Coca-Cola bottles, which was made in America during the 1980s. The point of this was that these two pictures have much in common. First of all, they are both containers for food, for human sustenance, and they are both temporally defined. One is connected to the Roman Empire, the second being connected to the modern society, especially the United States. They also carry a message. If we consider wine, olive oil, and wheat important commodities in the Roman world, Coca-Cola is always being presented as something of a symbol in the West. It's a symbol of a certain country, which is, as Rome was in its own day, dominant today. Now, this picture may be a simple show of principle, but from it derives that it is possible to use the same context and concepts to define both modern society on one side and ancient societies on the other. And this universality drove me to consider archaeology in a much wider sense than I was used to, at least in my first few years in college. I always thought about archaeology in the concept of dealing with prehistory, dealing with Rome, perhaps dealing with medieval times, something which was enforced by, let's say, doctrine in Central Europe, especially if we read early texts during the Second Yugoslavia, for example, in Slovenia, when Korošec and Grafenauer clearly defined the borders of archaeology and history. But as time went on, I became more accustomed to Western scholarship tradition, which acknowledges that archaeology should be a universal science regarding material culture of human societies. So I read these two books from Charles Orser and Principles and Practice of Industrial Archaeology from Palmer and Neverson, and I was immediately fascinated. This was an important influence, especially since though we had lectures in industrial archaeology in our master's program, it was never as clearly defined as I wanted it to be. There's a few reasons for this. One of them must be the lack of tradition. The technical heritage in Slovenia is studied elsewhere. It is studied by engineers. It is studied by technical museums. It is not ever present in archaeology. So I wanted to see what can be done in a regional aspect and what can be done in our tradition regarding industrial archaeology. I immediately hit a few problems. First of all was the problem that we did not have clear-cut concepts. Concepts developed, for example, for studying Manchester and New York, major industrial cities in the West, were not applicable, for example, in smaller towns in Slovenia. The same thing goes for colonial archaeology, which has clearly defined concepts for Africa, for the Far Eastern colonies, but European colonies are oftentimes left for the wayside. So I decided to do almost a test. I decided to take a test subject, test study, and see what I can do. First of all, realizing the drawbacks of such an attempt, I wanted to study something which is clearly spatially defined, meaning that the context I was going to study was supposed to be in the Slovenia or in its near proximity. So it could be applied down the line on a wider study of regional proportions. Second, I wanted it to be temporally defined, meaning that I needed to have a clear-cut period from which it came. And thirdly, I wanted it to be very clearly ideologically defined, since during my studies I realized that all industrial archaeology deals with some form of ideology. Now, around, I found several examples. Many of them were not very suitable for me. One reason for that being that most of them were connected to older areas of settlement, which brought a new category of the study, one being what is the relation between the new material context and the older one. And since I was just beginning to study this field, I decided that such an undertaking would be too much. So I looked around and I found an important industrial tradition in Slovenia and Istria, that of mining. Now, mining is very important for this because mining colonies and the material culture of miners is the very basis of industrial archaeology. The industrial archaeology starts its study in England, for example, with Lancashire coal mines. These are pictures from the book I mentioned before, Industrial Archaeology from Lancashire, and I decided to study a mining context of industry. Looking around, I found a settlement as a material monument fit all the criteria I mentioned. This is called the colony of Raša. The colony of Raša was built in the 1930s by Gustav Pulitzer Finale on the picture near the coal mining area of Labin. It is clearly spatially defined, it is temporally defined, and it has a clear ideological connotation, that being the connotation of fascism. The map you see here is the map of Istria and Slovenska Primorska, Slovenian littoral, during the time of fascist rule. Raša, Arsa in Italian, is here, and it soon became one of the most important mining settlements in Italy. It was oftentimes even referred to as the ruler of Italy, since Istria has quite rich gold deposits, and mining in Labin dates back to the 19th century. First of all, I would discuss the ideological context. The ideological context is that of fascism, which, through its programs defined in the book Discorso della Ascensione by Benito Mussolini, defined material culture and, most importantly, urbanism as one of the motors of the change of society. It leaned heavily on the work of Oswald Spengler, on your right, who wrote the book The Decline of the West, and the fascists, both the architects and the ideologues, took several things from it, one of them being the idea of the rule of the Caesars, the fact that the democracy is in its final phase, and that the rule of powerful men will replace it. Now, this is not the whole of Oswald Spengler's work. It is one part of it which the fascists liked, and upon it they designed a program of formulating material culture that would offer a way for ordinary Italians to become these greater men. And urbanism and colonization was one of the key aspects of it. So they defined several key points about the Italian material culture, several criteria that their colonies had to follow. First of them was the idea of Romanità, which is the idea that modern Italy, fascist Italy, was a direct heir of Rome, so the architecture and its symbolism and the symbolism of fascism should follow the Roman tradition. One of the main symbols of fascism thus became the fascia. And also the idea of Romanità meant that they had the natural right to colonize the former regions of the Roman Empire. The second connected ideology was that of Mediterraneità, being Mediterranean, which was the idea that the architecture and the world of Mediterranean was the cradle of civilization, so the modernistic architecture, such as that of Gustavo Pulitzer Finale, should imitate the spirit of these cultures, especially since they embody the Roman anima, the soul of the nation. Adding to the Roman connection, the third principle was the so-called bonification, which means that most of the Italian colonies and most of their attempts to remake the environment are placed in the, let's call this the middle of nowhere. They're either placed in the Pontine marshes, they're placed in Libya, Ethiopia, in Istria, especially in Istria, in the marshes, as to recreate the idea of the bringers of civilization. The last, of course, of these programmatic points was the point that the settlements should be the islands of ethnicity, which is a point that it was taken directly from nationalism, the idea that the settlement put into a region should be a settlement of a certain nation. This was clearly defined in theory, but in practice it was often not neglected, but it showed itself in different ways. Now, this is the settlement of Raša. If I hadn't told you that it was built on all those principles, you would be forgiven to see it as a typical mining settlement. You could see such settlements in West Virginia, in Lancashire, in surrounding Manchester, in the Ruhr, for example, or in France, around Lille. However, there are already several things that we can see that are following those traditions. For example, this is not a very, this picture is from afar, but if you look at this main square and the municipal palace, and you can see the arcades there, they were designed specifically to imitate the arcades in the palaces of Tuscan cities of the 17th and 16th century. Carrying on, Raša actually was one of the more successful projects of the fascist Italy in that region. Alongside the settlement, the port was built. On your right, you can see the Raša Canal, and on your left, you can see the importance that Raša played for the industrial development of Italy. The port of Raša is the second port, Arsa, is the second port by volume used by the coal mining industry in Italy. It was really important for the military, especially for its operations in the Balkans, and it was an important port to ensure that the Italian Navy had enough coal to contest the Adriatic against its enemies, and that's the reason why it was bombed several times during the Second World War. But the more important thing is that Raša is already studied. You could see that there are two, while I was working, I could see there were two major traditions of study, one of them being so-called regional tradition, focused on its architecture and less on its social meaning. This is most importantly encapsulated by Francesco Crecis, an architect who wrote a book, Arsa, La Bianca Città del Carbone, and to a certain extent by Slovene and Croat historians in Istria, who see it as a symbol of autarky, the concept of self-reliance of fascist states, and a symbol of industrial expansion, much less an ideologically driven settlement. One of such representatives is the Slovene historian Jure Ramšak, who is currently employed in University of Koper. The second tradition, much closer to industrial archaeology, was developed in the United States. The United States, and including Canada, came to the contact with this Italian settlements through their own settlements. Not many people know that the American Silver Legion and the Canadian Blue Shirts modeled their camps and their settlements. There are several new towns, so-called new towns in Alberta, Canada, designed by blue shirt fascist industrials by Italian architecture. So from that, an anthropological and architectural tradition, most encapsulated by Mia Fuller in her book Moderns Abroad, Architecture, Cities and Italian Imperialism, developed. And this school came much closer to the idea of colonization being a material encapsulation of a certain culture. This school defined several categories of Italian colonialism, one being the imperial grand cities like in the colonies, such as Benghazi and Tripoli, and their major reworks. And then there are three categories of individual Italian colonies which were built from scratch. These categories are divided by their location and their functionality. The first being that they're put into the immediate vicinity of major cities. The closest such colony is Torbiskoza, near Trieste, which was an industrial colony for paper design. Then there are agricultural colonies which are grand and monumental. You have a picture here of one in Italy, with its main building, so-called Basilica Romana. This is from Vittoria in Italy, which were actually copies of the Roman colonies. They're usually either squares or rectangular shaped, with a main square built up like a forum to resemble the Roman society. The third are much less grand, and they're called mining colonies, fascist mining colonies, which have an ideological connotation. They're built according to the standards of the fascist regime. However, they don't have such a huge iconographic symbolic system. Coming from architecture and anthropology, and clearly defining, there's a picture missing here, I tried to come to grips how would I, as an archaeologist, deal with such a monument. I went through several concepts. First concept was that of Niklas Luhmann and his systems theory, which you can see him on your left. The second one was from Pierre Bourdieu. He was supposed to be here. I don't know what happened. And I have to say that these two concepts, concept of the system theory and concept of habitus, were not applicable, especially since they did not deal so much with the material culture. I chose the work of Henri Lefebvre, French philosopher and author who wrote the book Production of Space. This is its Slovene translation, which I have at home. And he was very close to the traditions I mentioned of American anthropology, and also very close to the idea of industrial colonization, also an ideological modern colonization, since he also worked and visited, for example, Novi Beograd when it was being built. He formed a triangular concept of spatial representation, of constructing social space, which defines three categories. One being representations of space. This is space which is designed. This is a space which is conceived. So, for example, in Raša, this is a space as perceived and constructed by the architect and by the ideologues. Then there are representational spaces, which are spaces which are lived in. This is an idea of humans living in a space and understanding its messages. These two categories are connected by a third category, which is called spatial practice. This is a direct implementation of these two ideas in physical space. It is defined by roots, by architecture and construction. It is a system, an idea very similar to that which is already being used in historical archaeology, one of spatial axis analysis. Lefebvre stated that each and every new society builds a unique social space. That's why it is original. And its ideas are transmitted to the population through roots, through spatial practice, which is defined by roots, checkpoints, and things that certain individuals see and don't see. If you find that familiar, this is an idea that has been around in historical archaeology, but and also other periodical of archaeology for a very long time. For example, you have very traditional research of space axis analysis in castles. This one is for Portchester Castle, which analyzes how certain routes through the castle open to some people and close to other people. This thing was applied through Lefebvre in modern architecture and modern anthropology as well. Going back to Raša, now that I have explained you the concept, Raša, this is its original plan, designed in 1935, was designed as an industrial settlement with two major areas of habitation. One part, the larger part, being meant for workers, the other being meant for fascist and corporate leadership. These two parts were supposed to be connected by a main square where most of the public buildings were supposed to be in a stadium, and they also planned to build a pool here, which would be open for all of them. This plan of Raša follows all of the concepts I mentioned before, including that one of the islands of ethnicity. this town was meant to be solely Italian mining town, which later did not happen. And since we're discussing Raša as a representation of space, this is very important. This first plan was designed for Italians, and when that didn't happen, in the later era, it was more than 70% of the people in Russia were from Yugoslav origin. The plan was changed like this, and this is very important in the sense of what we were talking before. You can all see that the square here was moved, and this was a deliberate attempt to divide the two populations. Region B, where solely Italians lived, and region A, where the population was mixed. This is deliberate demand from the fascist leadership that wanted to divide the two populations, and it brings in a concept which is very known to colonial archaeologists, so-called cordon sanitaire. We will talk about it later, but for us it is important that it changes spatial practice of the space. If we look at the former picture here, you can see that the main route through the settlement connects the two parts of population, and that the square is open for everybody. It is meant as a place of meeting. It is meant as a place of social life. Afterwards, the square is raised on a plateau above both areas of the town, and it is completely enclosed by a wall. And you do not have the entrance to that square from either region B or region A. You can only enter through the north-south axis. This is very important since the concept that it includes is the idea of cordon sanitaire, which was defined by both anthropology and colonial archaeology as an idea of using empty space or public buildings to enforce a so-called socio-economic or ethno-identic division between people. The most famous such attempt is the one of Singapore. This is the plan of the excavation of the old town of Singapore when they were building the city, and showed how the public utilities were placed in between of European and Arabian town and everything else. It was supposed to enforce a certain social hierarchy, and it also changes the practice of space. This bridge, for example, was being guarded, and most people that came across the bridge were immediately driven up this road so they could go to the working places for the local population. This is a system that was then used all over the world. It was used in the most industrial colonies, especially in the New World and in Africa. It is less often used in Europe, but it's a concept that is most often used in fascist colonies. And such examples include Spanish fascist colonies in Galicia and Italian colonies in the Slavic regions or in Ethiopia. So this is a concept which embodies the idea of social engineering through material culture. This changes, as I said, this changes the role of the square. You have the pictures of the square, and I would like you to note several things. These are all public buildings, but you can already see on the pictures that the square is empty. It is completely enclosed by a brick wall. It is, as you can see, raised above the road. That's the roof of another building, and it plays a completely different role. If before the entire city was meant as a representation of space, now the square plays a sole role as a representation of space inside the settlement itself. Several architects and even soldiers, German soldiers who were visiting the town, stated that the square is empty, and ironically this is one of the most important issues for the municipality of Raša even today. As you can see, the square only has a single bar and a church. The rest of it is empty and it's not in use. And the British architect, military attaché to Italy, compared it to a Roman and Greek theater. He stated that walking down the city, I had a feeling that it was a live and vibrant place. When I came to the main square, I got a feeling like I was in a Roman or Greek monument. And this was a thing that would crop up in fascist settlements all over the world, even though with certain iterations. For fascist industrial colonies, one of the features of such colonies, it seems to be that the public spaces we would perceive as lived spaces, for example, public squares, are oftentimes void of life and are built up like Roman monuments. They are filled with iconography. For example, this one is the prime example of it, which also is important for us since it shows that it was not just material culture, it was also the concept of time that was supposed to change. For example, here it says, during the reign of Vittorio Emanuele III, Duce Benito Mussolini, year 15. This year 15 refers to the year of the inauguration of Russia, and also it refers to the year when Fascist Italy came to be, year 22. Now, such counting is oftentimes not referred to in colonies in central Italy. You will rarely find such inscriptions in, for example, Vittoria or in the cities of Pontine Marshes, but they're everywhere in Istria, and they're everywhere in Libya and Ethiopia. Of course, this has a clear reference to Rome, which is as the Romans count their years from the formation of the Roman city. Rasha, as I was saying, was a theatrical place. I couldn't find any proof that real life took place there. Mostly there were fascist commemorations, occasional mass in the church, and official visits. The mayor of Rasha, when I talked to him, said that one historian said that Benito Mussolini, the German governor of Istria, and Tito and Tudjman spoke from the same balcony. But the problem here was that even during the era of fascism, the square was void, so they constantly brought people from outside to make it more alive. This idea of a square actually encapsulates what most critics of fascist architecture and urbanism stated, that for an ideology that says it will build a new world is more of a monument to the old. The second part, the fascists tried to influence people and influence the material world of the people was through the standard of living. First of all, the standard of living in Russia was quite high. This is a typical working house in Russia. As you can see, it tries to imitate certain Italian houses from the northern Italy, though the outside of should not fully. This is a fully built-up apartment complex with 4 flats, 2 in the upper floor, 2 in the down floor. And it is important that if the main square did not serve its purpose, it was dead, as some people said it, this part of influence worked really well, because the Italian colonists all over their empire gave the people a really high standard of living. You have to know that this is during an age when most people don't have running water. In such settlements now, in every house in Russia has warm water, has heating, has a bathroom, a toilet, and 2 rooms and a kitchen. With this is a flat meant for 4 people, for a family. And one way in which this actually worked in the society was that one of the most common refrains when the Yugoslav New Authority was interrogating people living in Russia said, why were so many children, for example, in the Beliva, in the youth organization of fascism? One miner clearly stated that they have risen us from poverty, they've given us great homes, and for that we should be loyal to them. And this shows how certain areas of social engineering actually had an effect. For example, the second such testimony, which concurs with this, and it concurs with the idea that many of the poorer mining families actually appreciated this kind of material standards and showed that through loyalty, was when a teacher in the school in Russia stated in afterward interrogation that the children in her class learned Italian better than those whom she taught in her home city of Milan. Now, this is not universal. Of course, the area of Rasha and Labin is also the area of the first revolt against the Italian fascism, when Labin miners formed the Labin Republic in the 1920s and revolted against fascism. However, it shows that we have in our immediate vicinity an attempt to redesign society through material culture. And not just society carrying on, also redesigning social relationship. These two families both lived in Russia, both were Italian, but the corporatism of Italian fascism constantly went through its length to show through propaganda that they were actually connected. And the idea of Russia, where Russia actually follows that corporatist ideology, as I said, offering a very high standard of living to the people that live in it, especially workers. And that standard of living was also encapsulated in sports, in the fact that every miner got 3 warm meals per day. They were cooked by the army, and the fact that the wives did not have to do laundry, since the laundry rooms were actually corporately owned. This is actually a pool which was only partially completed, pool for workers. It was a gift by Count Chiano, the foreign minister of Italy at that time. The second part, where Italians tried to reform society, is the idea of bonification. And this is the idea that its material imprint will change the environment itself. This can be studied and understood through archaeology if we understand the idea that archaeology deals also with the human environment. Here are only 2 of the books that influenced me: Archaeology as Human Ecology and Archaeology of Capitalism, especially Archaeology of Capitalism when it deals with the idea of late medieval enclosures changing the British society, English society. However, Russia, as I stated, was put in the middle of marshes. On the pictures, you can see the effort the Italian government went through to change the environment, which was before that a marshy plain, into a livable area. This is the so-called bonification and melioration of the Raša plain. And the importance is that it actually really changed flora and fauna in the region. This melioration project changed the environment so much that the plants changed, which was actually an object of the study of the Italian Florological Society from Rome. And it also changed the epidemiologic picture of the region. Istria was a malaric area during the early era of fascist Italy. This map shows the malaric areas during the 1925 census and then later in 1933. And you can see that Raša and Raša Canal here are in the middle of the malaric areas. Now this is because much of Istria was covered by small, I wouldn't say ponds or marshes, but standing water, and malaria-carrying mosquitoes thrive there. The first thing the Italians did was they completely rebuilt the water supply system. This system is still used today. You can see it here in the north, in Slovenia and Istria, in the center of Istria, and in the south near Raša. This completely changed the habits of the people, because most people from these areas before that used water from wells, from standing waters and small streams. Afterwards, they got water, fresh water from the government, essentially. And this also allowed the Italians to move to the second part of their project, which is eradication of malaria. And the second, which is very important, because this is one of their main achievements. It was all ever present in propaganda, and it is also one of the connections they constantly drew with Rome, not in Istria but in southern Italy, for example, where Benito Mussolini clearly stated that as Rome left this region and stopped using it for agriculture, malaria returned to southern Italy. And when we came back and colonized Calabria again, we eradicated malaria. Now, I went to check that, and this is considered a fact amongst Italian ecologists. It is also referred to in McCormick's Economy of the Ancient World. We can see here that the changes in environment were also seen as an idea of putting a constant material imprint in the society at that point. Now, of course, Raša was no exception. On your left, you have the plan of melioration of Raša Valley, which was this all in green are marshes, and the plans for the main canal in Raša. This is the canal today. Istria is full of such canals. The local architects and people I talked to said they're everywhere, especially around Labin. They're all inclined towards the sea. Their sole purpose is to stop water from standing still. And the problem is that a few years ago, the Architectural Institute in Verona wanted to do a examination of such canals in Istria and in Tuscany to see whether they could match them in the space, to see if there is any pattern in the space. However, they did not get the permits for lidar scanning, neither from Croatia nor from Italy. So we don't know how prevalent these canals are. We only have mouth-to-mouth testimony, but this is one of the major investments in the environment by the fascist Italy, and it is important for Russia, and it is also one of the ways archaeologists, with our methodological approaches of mass terrain investigation, large area non-invasive research, could help better understand this period. Going on, all of this had a clear ideological purpose. If on one side this is the well from the new waterworks by the fascist Italy in Buja, in northern Istria. Now, as you can see, there is Aqueducto Istriano, and again the reference to fascist counting of the years. Also, Raša was filled with these buildings, small buildings. These are actually public toilets, and I found it very interesting that each one of these plates was supposed to carry a fascia or an eagle, and I discussed it at length with my mentor at that time, Katerina Katarina-Predonik, and with my co-mentor, Predrag Novakovic, why. And then I realized that we're still, and this also goes into the system of special practice by Henri Lefebvre, it is near the main road, and it is a utility people use. Nobody expects propaganda there. One of the things that Mia Fuller, for example, said when I wrote her, said that I should be observant of the public utilities in the subways and in the main public utilities of today, where this political propaganda, which is so prevalent in the fascist era, has been completely changed by commercial propaganda. And it's actually true. Carrying on, I was then faced by another question. Much of the history of Russia is written of it as a solely totalitarian system, and I had no reference to that. The only reference I had was an Archaeology of Socialism, the book by Viktor Buchley, where he dealt with a similar phenomenon of Stalinist colonies in Russia. And I noted that there are several major differences. First of all, fascism in their colonies focuses on individual. Family is still a basic unit of society. There is clear ethno-social distinction in the material culture, whilst Viktor Buchley noted that if you wanted the closest approximation of an ideal building, apartment building for a socialist society, it would be a modern dorm room for the students, with apartments surrounding common utilities. This communal idea actually was different from that of fascism. So, at least in the material culture, these two societies, both totalitarian, are completely different. They follow different principles. Russia is far more akin to abandoned coal towns in the Americas, abandoned coal towns in England. For example, here you have the book Anthropological and Archaeological Research of Exploring the Abandoned Coal Towns of West Virginia, where it is noted that there are several key principles which archaeologists and anthropologists in the United States have noted for industrial colonization. First of them is deliberate ethnic and socioeconomic segregation. Russia checks both accounts. Different classes of buildings are allocated according to corporate hierarchy, or in our case, even combining corporate and national hierarchy. Russia, again, ticks all the boxes. Formation of different social institutions corresponding to different social and ethnic groups. Now, this is also a feature of Russia, especially since Slavic workers could not enter the seat of the fascist party, neither could they actually be seated in the hotel in Russia, which was also used as a meeting room for the corporate offices. Whilst those children who were accepted in the schools and were treated like Italians could. So Russia, though ideologically built, though ideologically constructed, follows every key principle of industrial colonization. So I noted, and I think that Russia, as such, can be defined as an industrial monument. And as such, industrial colony archaeology is relevant in our study. The main objection to me working this non-Orthodox topic was that it would not be useful for our region, since we don't have huge industrial cities from the 19th century or from early 20th century, at least in Slovenia. And I went around and I found several material contexts which can be studied just the same. For example, in the picture you have Vurnik colony after an architect who built it in Maribor, northeastern Slovenia, which follows the same key principles as Raša. You have multi-apartment working buildings which have gardens and are self-sufficient. They are universal, they are allocated to corporate hierarchy, they are divided by a huge open space from these buildings in the rear, which are buildings for corporate leadership, and they're also divided from the former areas of Maribor where most people lived. Again, I also found such examples in Ljubljana. I found them in Novo Mesto. The Colonia in Novo Mesto is only one of 5 houses, and today completely unrecognizable. I found them in Gorica. I found them also near Jesenice, and they follow the same principles. Now, the problem, I think, with us using these principles is that Slovenian archaeology, like many others, doesn't have the clear tradition of studying. Even I had to deal with this through anthropological concepts and not through archaeological concepts, since American anthropological and archaeological concepts cannot be clearly transferred to our region. Now, this opens for us 2 major questions for archaeology. First of them is, how do we develop such concepts? How do we construct industrial archaeology in our regional national archaeologists, which is a question that I cannot answer at this point. And the second question being, what do we do with such monuments, especially since there are monuments that are still lived. If you look at this picture, you can still see similarities from factory worker in the early 19th century, from the beginning of photography, and the factories today. I think we have a problem that, at least I noted that problem when I was discussing it with my colleagues, that we fail to see that our concepts don't deal with the magnitude of social change in the 18th and 19th century. And as I said, one of the main challenges in the future is how do we realize that change and how do we integrate that change into our science. Also, one of the main challenges here is how do we find an independent voice as an archaeology in the myriad of sciences that are studying it. Archaeology in America and in England is always a part of a wider interdisciplinary studies of industrial landscapes. It works with anthropology, it works with architecture, urbanism, it works with natural sciences, and such interdisciplinary approach requires willingness and preparedness to work together from all sides, not just from us. And this is also one of the problems I saw when I studied, since many of the historians I mentioned were not very keen on sharing their data, especially Ramšak and Krečić. The Americans were far more accommodating. Now, the second question that this opens is a question of what to do with these monuments. Now, in the picture you have the New York High Line. For those who don't know, the New York High Line is the raised railroad, industrial railroad for transport, which was one of the key features of New York, since it avoided traffic and pedestrians. But after the many factories collapsed and the gentrification began, this was the most common scene. Several groups in New York, especially one led by archaeologists and anthropologists, the same author that wrote the book about West Virginia mining towns, designed a project how to turn this into a park. This is a project which was seized upon by architects. So today, New York High Line actually still serves the purpose it served in the past. It is still one of the main routes for traffic, one of the main routes of spatial practice in the city. So this also offers not a solution, but an inspiration for us. When we study material culture, we should try and think about what makes it not just universal, what makes it alive. So, for example, this was a project which redefined the main role of the New York High Line and recreated it in a new context. For example, one of the few problems of modern architecture and modern history and modern archaeology in Central Europe, for example, including Slovenia, is that many industrial contexts are falling apart and they're now being regarded as degraded areas, which are either torn down or that nobody knows what to do with them. And I think that archaeology, with our vision, especially one that many architects refuse to use, that of landscape and studying ecology through human material culture, is a way where we can add actively to this discussion.
Vurnikovo naselje v Mariboru, od kdaj je?
Vurnikovo naselje je iz ranih 20. godina, mislim da je 25. godina, je zaštiteno kao arhitekturni spomenik, ali bilo je više puta već neke kuće su uništene, neki delovi naselja ne stoje više zbog gradnje različitih cesta i takve stvari.
Prvo hoću da se zaista zahvalim Črtomiru, od kako sam prvi put čula pre nekoliko godina za temu njegovog master rada, jako sam želela da vidim šta se tu sve unutra dešavalo i nisam ni najmanje razočarana, pošto su u ovoj vašoj temi, u vašoj prezentaciji je jedno obilje tema koje su meni jako važne i koje me jako inspirišu. Prva je naravno Istra, koja nije samo profesionalna nego i potpuno lična. A drugo su različite teme koje ste vi pokretali, kao što je, na primjer, pitanje kolonijalizma, odnosno kolonijalnog prisustva na nekim različitim teritorijama, načina na koji se ta kolonijalna prisustvo artikuliše kroz materijalnu kulturu, načina na koje se ono nameće, odnosno na koji se nameću određene ideološke matrice koje se onda artikulišu kroz zidani prostor, kroz arhitekturu, kroz željeno i upravljano, usmeravano kretanje određenim arhitektonskim celinama. Takođe mi je drago da ste pomenuli nekoliko knjiga koje su meni takođe vrlo važne, kao što je Matthew Johnson, Arheologija kapitalizma i Arheologija socijalizma Viktora Buchlija. I upravo bih se na Buchlija nadovezala, imam jedno pitanje koje može biti eventualno predlog i možda inspiracija za neko vaše dalje istraživanja kojim imate nameru da se bavite. Buchlij se dosta bavi upravo načinima na koji su građani, stanovnici tog bloka koji je on istraživao, stambenog bloka, zapravo sprovodili razne strategije subverzije na tom prostoru, odnosno nisu pristajali na sve ono, svesno ili ne, na sve ono što je taj prostor zapravo trebalo da učini, odnosno da nisu se ponašali u skladu sa onim kako je zamišljeno da se ponašaju, pa je zato prostor upravo konstruisan, arhitektonski konstruisan na određeni način. Oni su nalazili različite kreativne načine subverzije i otpora, manipulacije prostorom, da bi pružili otpor, ponavljam, ponovo svesno ili ne, onome što se od njih tražilo kao ponašanje. Da li ste nailazili bilo u pisanim izvorima, bilo u etnografiji, bilo na kraju možda i u samoj materijalnim pokazateljima u Raši, na neke načine na koje su stanovnici Raše zapravo se opirali tome što je bilo od njih traženo kao ponašanje. Recimo, upravo meni je padalo na pamet dok sam vas slušala da je činjenica da je trg bio gotovo uvek prazan. Možda je upravo to bila jedna od strategija subverzije. Mi nećemo tu da se okupljamo. Odnosno, da li ste nailazili na neke takve tragove toga da su se možda građani doseljeni, kolonizovani na tom mestu, suprotstavljali onome što je ta zamišljena i sprovedena arhitektonska intervencija navodila da oni treba da čine, da rade i da se ponašaju i na kraju da njihove identitete modeluje na određeni način, a oni su možda imali neku potpuno drugu ideju.
Da, našao sam nekoliko primjera. Jedan od takvih u arhivu u Pazinu gdje je arhiv iz Raše, da je bilo puno grafita na ovim napisima italijanskim, a kada su našli one što su pisali ove grafite karabinjeri, to su bili ne najmlađa djeca koja je bila u školi, ne rudari, to su bili oni 18, tamo 17-18, tinejdžeri koji nisu išli kroz fašističko školovanje i koji nisu živjeli od rada u Raši. to su bili neki studenti, puno njih bilo Italijana, što je zanimljivo, pa drugi način koji Francesco Krečić ispostavlja da možemo razumjeti kao otpor, nije bio svakodnevni otpor, ali bilo nekoliko štrajkova u ratno vreme. Sada je diskusija između historičara, jer to su štrajkovi bili i u sjevernoj Italiji, da li to je bio otpor protiv režima zbog katastrofalnog italijanskog učestvovanja, ili je bio to više socijalni otpor rudara. Ali nisam našao neke prakse, nisam nalazio na neku praksu koja bi bila stalna. To su bile sve sporadični otpor protiv toga.
Da li to znači da su ljudi prihvatali, recimo, te stambene jedinice upravo onako kako su one projektovane i u njima živeli upravo na način na koji se očekivalo da oni žive?
Da, u prvim godinama da, zbog toga jer su nacrtno tamo nastanili porodice sa otac, majka i nekoliko djeca, kako je to bilo zamišljeno, ali kada Raša postane dio vojnog pokušaja Italije da se uključi u Drugi svjetski rat, tamo sve se promijeni i Raša postane premala, tako da u nekim instancijama u jednom stanu žive dve porodice ili više ljudi više radnika, bez porodica, ali nitko nije još učinio antropološku analizu kako su ljudi živjeli u samim stanovima, pa i ja nisam još došao do toga, tako da ne mogu da kažem da li je bio neki interni otpor.
Meni najviše interesuje reupotreba materijalne kulture. Dakle, interesuje me kako razlikujemo reupotrebu u tom vremenu kao neki vid subverzije, kad je neka ideologija namenila određeni način življenja, u odnosu na reupotrebu koja dolazi kasnije sa promenom društvenog uređenja, ideologije, pošto, kao što si rekao, to je manje više u nekim situacijama i živo nasleđe koje i danas je u upotrebi. Tako da kakve strategije arheološki kroz materijalnu kulturu bismo mogli da razvijemo, da razlikujemo te društvene promene kroz reupotrebu u odnosu na subverziju u nekom planiranom sistemu?
U odnosu na materijalnu kulturu morali bi da proučimo, barem po mom mišljenju, odnos između male, ove materijalne kulture i život iz zidane kulture, jer ove se opet navezuje na pisane izvore iz karabinjerskog zapisnika, da italijanska je vlast redovito išla kroz stanove zbog toga čemu bi Englezi kazali kontraband. Nikada nije referirao šta kontraband jest. Znam da su pronašli neke stvari koje italijanska vlast nije htjela. Baš mislim da su bili zabranjeni pravoslavni križevi, zbog toga jer italijansko društvo je katoličko ili fašističko. Jedna stvar koja bila bi, kada idemo na dvije ideologije, jest da u škola u Raši bila je prvotno zamišljena kao škola gdje su djeca ločena po spolu. Bilo je 5 razreda za dječake, 5 razreda za djevojke i jedna između osnovnih zahtjeva rudara uvijek bila je to da se njihovo djecu poučuje kao djecu, a ne kao muškarci ili žene. I to je prva stvar koja je nova vlast, komunistička vlast učinila i prije nego što je izbrisala sve ove ikonografske zapise. Sad kada razmišljam kako bih mi mogli da studiramo ovu subverziju, jedino što mi pali na pamet jest da bih išli kroz historiju kuća. Italijanska vlast je pisala zapisnike tko je gdje živio, pa onda da bih išli kroz ove kontraband liste i liste političkih kazni koje su mogli dobiti rudari, pa da bi ovo povezali sa nekom materijalnom kulturom.
Jedan klasičan primjer je naravno damnacio memorije, kada se menja režim. Ne znam da li imaš tu neku sliku kako je izgledao trg sa italijanskim herojem kojeg je nadomestio jedan drugi heroj.
Imam jednu sliku, gdje je na kuće su bile naslikane poslije oslobođenja zvezde, partizanske zvezde, ali ne vidi se baš najbolje na fotografiji, tako da nije bila unutra. Ali ovaj Damnatio Memoriae išao je kroz sasvim izbris svih napisa, svih kipova, kako sam pokazao kod onih public utilities, svih ikonografija, i onda ovo bilo je nadomesteno sa socijalističkom ikonografijom. Onaj natpis koji sam pokazao na glavnom portalu u Raši bio je nadomesten za svaki 1. maj, bio je odstranjen i onda nadomestan svaki 1. maj sa napisom Raša pozdravljiva oslobođenje, pozdravljiva druga Tita. Tako da upotrebljavaju istu lokaciju, isti lokalitet ikonografije, ali sasvim se promijeni ikonografija.
Ako bih ja smeo da nešto pitam, dobro, za ikonografiju je sasvim jasno da se morala promeniti, da je morala da promeni ideološki predznak, to je jasno. Međutim, mene zanima kako je stvarna upotreba javnog prostora, da li se ona promenila, da li se promenila onaj odnos koji je postojao u doba Italije, fašističke Italije, odnos trga i prilaza trgu desnog i levog dela grada, da li su javne građevine, škola, uprava i tako dalje samo promenile ideološki predznak, a ostali isti, i da li se može videti da je način života u gradu u jednom, ajde da se ne lažemo, ipak takođe drugačijem, ali totalitarnom režimu bio sličan na neki način kada se govori o javnom prostoru.
Tako, škola se promeni, kako sam kazao, prva stvar koju učini Jugoslavija posle rata jest da desegregira školu. Nisu već razredi za dečake i punce, nego su to unisex razredi, unisex grupe, tako da to se promijeni. Trg se ne promijeni. Glavni problem trga još danas jeste, kako ste vidjeli, to je parkirište. Ovaj trg je još uvek stupa se samo kako bilo je originalno. Jedan iz glavnih problema Raše danas, pored financija, tako da ne mogu iti u neku veliku obnovu, jest da ne znaju kako bi vratili život na trg. Problem toga jest da je trg zaštitan i danas kao kulturni spomenik, pa ne mogu da ga promene. Ali tada nije se promenio trg, ali se promenio fokus javnog života. Fokus javnog života u Jugoslaviji bio na stadionu i u bazenu. Tamo kod stadiona izgradili su radničke klubove, izgradili su radničku menzu i Raša imala je 2 amaterska nogometna kluba, tako da ide ovog socijaliziranja preišla od ove fašističke ideologije na sport u gradu, ali trg je još uvek imao ovu ideološku konotaciju, jer sve partijske stvari radile su se na trgu kao i u vreme fašizma i na isti način, tako da to je vrlo fascinantno. To je bio onaj, kako mi je kazao župan Raše, kada sam pričala sa njim, podžupan Raše, on je kazao sa istog balkona su pred množicom pričali Mussolini, nemački guverner Istre kada Italija se predaje, pa i Tito i Tuđman. Tako da sam trg i sam način života i odnos trg i delovi grada nisu se promijenili. Pa nisu promijenili ni danas.
Možda nije odviše spomenuti jednu stvar kad govorimo o načinu života za vrijeme fašističkog režima. Režim je tada pokušao da zapuni kompletan život ljudi. Govorim sad recimo o rudarima u Raši, znači oni su zaposleni na poslu, a posle posla postoji jedan institut koji se zvao dopo lavoro. To je način kako su organizirali obične ljude, uglavnom su to bili muškarci, naravno, ti su prisutni u javnom životu, žene ne toliko, deca na neki način su prisutna. A dopo lavoro, teško bi to preveo, to doslovno znači posle rada, posle posla, su bili neke vrste klubovi za razonodu, kafane koje su imale tu funkciju i oni su bili namjerno građeni da se jednostavno može, ako zatreba, da se i preko tog instituta dopo lavoro može mobilizirati ljude za neke akcije, da se može održati neke manje političke govore ili udruživati građane ili radnike u neke grupe sa kojima ste onda mogli tamo komunicirati. Tu se dešava neka mala jednostavne zabave su. I taj dopo lavoro ima značajnu funkciju, on zapunjava popodne, da se tako izrazim, kad nisi na poslu, a ne spavaš. I to je fašizam vrlo jasno negovao, da drži kontrolu i nad tim delom radnog dana.
Takve institucije imaju sve fašističke države, od Vaterlandische Front u Austriji, koja formira takvu instituciju, pa do Španjolske i Portugalske, pa onda i do Kraft durch Freude u nacističkoj Njemačkoj. Ali moram da kažem da u Raši je kuća dopo lavore vrlo mala, što je jedna između razlika između Raše i ostalih kolonija, na primjerice u Libiji pa i u centralnoj Italiji. Ali do ovog još nisam prišao šta bih to značilo, zašto je tako i zašto je tako pristup ovdje izabran.
Na početku prezentacije je nekako ostao razočaran Bourdieuom, kako vam nije mnogo pomogao Bourdieu, a evo upravo se ovde u četu sada Monika i ja neke fusnote dodajemo kada smo kod dopo lavore, odnosno kod dokolice, odnosno kod slobodnog vremena koje nije tako slobodno, koje zapravo sistem pokušava da nekako strukturira na svoj način i da i u tom trenutku i u tim trenucima takođe utiče na način ponašanja i na način kretanja stanovništva. Tu zapravo može da vam bude Bourdieu dosta koristan u nekom sledećem daljem istraživanju ako nastavite ovim putem, što bih ja volela. Onda vas može tu dosta Bourdieu osnažiti da razmišljate o tome kako to slobodno vreme, leisure time, navodno slobodno vreme, takođe strukturira zapravo čitavu jednu mrežu socijalnih odnosa koja će se na kraju ipak prelomiti neminovno, kao što mi arheolozi najbolje znamo, neminovno će se nekako i materializovati na ovaj ili onaj način. Evo, samo toliko sam htjela da dopunim.
Da, mislim, ja ću kazati nešto što nije baš, mislim, jeste znak profesionalnosti. Ja mislim da mi Bourdieu nije toliko pomogao jer ga nisam baš dobro razumio kada sam ga prvi put čitao i Lefebvre sam bolje razumio, ali sad kad sam idem još jednom kroz njega i Levi Štrosa, više mi je jasno. Pa mislim da je, kako ste kazali, koncepti koje ima su neki, može se upotrebiti, ali kako sam kazao, glavni problem koji sam imao tekom ovog rada i koji još uvek imam jest da je vrlo teško definirati koncept na novo, jer naša tradicija je sasvim drugačija kako engleska. Tako da imao sam dvojni rad sa konceptima. Prvi je bio da sam pronašao koncepte i primjer koji bi bio primjeren za industrijsku arheologiju, a onda sam tražio interpretacijski koncept koji bi dovoljno dobro razumio da ga mogu da ga upotrijebim. A u tom vremenu Bourdieu nije bio baš to za mene.
Master svakako nije poduhvat u kojem se sve savlada, nego poduhvat u kojem se postavljaju nekakvi osnovi koji se dalje razvijaju. Druga stvar koja, ako kažem, vas ovaj put i dalje zanima, mada znam da se trenutno bavite jednom sasvim drugom temom koja je jednako zanimljiva i važna, ali druga je stvar, mogu biti radovi Daniela Millera koji se bavi upravo kolonijalnom i postkolonijalnom situacijom, doduše na Trinidadu, i upravo kada ste pominjali Coca-Colu, to mi je palo na pamet, koji se upravo bavi tim različitim materializacijama, upravo u okviru Material Culture Studies. Bavi se odnosom kolonizatora i kolonizovanog i različitim načinima manipulacije materijalne kulture u tom kontekstu. To vam takođe preporučujem ako budete se ponovo vraćali na ove teme, Daniela Millera i njegove radove, naročito recimo Black Sweet Drink from Trinidad, koje je upravo o Coca-Coli. To vam može biti i zabavno za čitanje, a i korisno za dalje istraživanje u ovom pravcu, kažem, ako se na to budete vraćali.
Pa samo da odgovorim, vratit ću se, jer jedan razlog zašto sam išao na teoriju i istoriju arheologije je i ta da sam radio na temi u kojoj nisam našao neke arheološke tradicije, pa sam kazao da prije nego se vratim na takvu temu, jer to mi je još uvek jedna između najzanimljivih tema, moram da razumijem tradiciju iz koje ističem, da onda, kako je jučer kazao profesor Palavestra, da razumijemo našu genealogiju, da se onda mogu kroz ovo znanje vratiti na takve teme. Tako da to je bio, a Daniela Millera znam za njegove radove, ali još ih nisam čitao.
I to je jako dobar i zreo put koji ste odabrali, što nije baš jako često u ovo doba, tako da super.
Kako je bilo sa Rašom, sa demografijom u Raši posle kapitulacije Italije i taj prolaz do dolaska partizana, oslobođenja i uspostavljanja, da kažem, nove Raše?
Tako, kod Raše imamo pisni izvor, to je cenzus italijanski, njemački i onda posle Drugog svjetskog rata. Pa sada u vreme Hrvatske. Prvo dolaze Italijani, pa veliko Jugoslavena iz območja Istre, pa isto iz Zadra, iz ovih regija, pa veliko ljudi iz Sardinije gdje je isto razvijena ova rudarska industrija. Ali već u vreme Njemačke Italijani se počinju da se iseljavaju. Cenzus iz 1945. u januaru kaže tamo još 5% Italijana, a poslije Drugog svjetskog rata prvi cenzus u vreme Jugoslavije, on ukaziva da tamo nije više ni Njemaca koji su neki došli više kao garanzija u vreme kapitulacije Italije, pa nema ni Italijana. Ali puno je još u to vreme nekoliko familija Slovenaca, pa i nekoliko dolaze iz Srbi pa i Bosanci. Ali poslije već u 80-ih sve više se naseljavaju Hrvati iz Hercegovine i jedan između historijskih analiza kaže da to je do neke mere bilo i nacrtno, barem u 90-ima kada još u Raši živi ova mala shipbuilding, grade se brodovi, industrija pa i još rudnik radi do neke mere, sve više rudara iz Hercegovine. Tako da imamo ovu tranziciju iz multinacionalnog grada u vreme fašističke Italije, iako on nije bio planiran kao tak, onda sada hrvatski grad u to, ali kroz toga imamo više etapa sa procentima. Ali uvek su Hrvati bili najveća skupina tamo oko 60%. Poslije Drugog rata, ali prije Drugog rata bilo je Hrvata oko 50%, Slovenaca oko 15%, a sve ostalo su bili Italijani. Tako da to je ono što sam kazao, da su promijenili plan, jer to je bilo mišljeno da će biti 100% Italijana, a onda bilo je više ovih, kako su Italijani kazali, šjavi ljudi.